Thank you, everyone. This will be our Advanced Topics webinar, and we will be covering the topic of X-bracing. We'll be looking at its functionality, its purpose, and we'll also sort of look at some of the limitations and some other alternatives, but ultimately we want to focus on just selling X-bracing, be able to explain it, go over it, and hopefully you can use this as a tool to understand all about X-bracing. So let's get to the basics. We have our building here. We typically see these types of buildings. And we want to first focus on the purpose of a frame. Now a frame, what's really great is we'll have wind. Wind will come and hit this side of the wall, and the frame acts as a purpose as getting the load up and over the building and holding it in place there. And that's how a frame works. Now with X-bracing, it's a little bit more direct. As wind comes and hits the side, it'll come and it'll push on the building, and it pushes, it'll catch right here on the X-bracing and it'll hold it down. Same thing with this direction. If it goes this direction, it'll catch and pull. And X-bracing typically works with both wind loads and earthquakes. You get shifting in this direction, sort of laterally here, where it goes side to side. Earthquakes do the same thing. It shakes the building this way. Wind will push on it and shake the building in this direction. And so this building works pretty good with the end wall. We have X-bracing. But when it comes to the side wall, we push now on the end wall, pushing, we don't have any X-bracing. And sort of what you get is sort of a domino effect. You'll have a push and it'll just sort of fall and nothing will really catch it there. And thus what typically ends in a result is you get this warning. Following engineering warnings occurred during the calculations that may require custom engineering and may affect calculated price of the building. So this price isn't fully accurate. There's some extra little things, to be account. And we have adequate X-bracing was not found for the sidewalls and roof of the building. Buildings require a minimum of 1 available bay for X-bracing, otherwise custom engineering will be required. Click here for more information. And totally, if you ever get this warning, our goal is hopefully to learn how to fix this warning and address it. But this is good reading, good things to know. You can also just find it on our knowledge base as well. So we need a bay of X-bracing. I've already sort of pre-made a building, so we're going to open that up here. Now we're not going to save. So that was our bad example. I have a better example. There we are. Let's put on the walls. See? So we have it a little bit wider here, and we'll calculate that out. And hey, we still have that warning. I did that on purpose. I wanted to bring out the fact that a bay needs to be a minimum of 1/3 of the height. So in this case, we only have it being 1/4, only 3 foot wide. 1/3 of 12 would be 4. So we need to make it a little bigger. I did the math really easy. In that regards, it gets a little bit complicated when you get like 15 and things. So we need to go to our building, and we're going to make it a little bit wider. In that regards, I understand that many people can just make buildings wider for certain things. This is more just for display purposes. And so just sort of get an idea here. And so here we go. We made it a little bit wider, and thus now we have our X-bracing. Now when things push, the wind and earthquake loads push this direction, this catches it, and we'll keep it in place. Vice versa, this direction will catch it and go in that place. But we still have this little asterisk here, and we have again another engineering warning, and it says it could not find adequate anchor bolts for the following walls. Sidewall A and sidewall B, custom engineering may be required. Now what's going on here is when the building gets pushed in this direction, it gets caught right here, and it's being pulled. And so when it pulls also in this direction as well. It has to pull, and it's pulling on this anchor bolt. Now the best way to pull anchor bolts would be perpendicular, straight on up. The worst way would be pulling along the concrete. I mean, that's not going to help you anything at all to pull those out. You're going to be twisting it. It's just not a good idea. You want to go straight. And so you want to get closer to being flat to pulling those out. So in this direction, this is a little bit too steep. And so if we widen it once again a little bit more, we can get the effect of widening it, tilting it out, as the balloon's calculating. It's widened, tilted out, so now it's not pulling quite as steep. It's a little bit gradual, and thus it's lowered it enough to make the building work. No warnings. So this building will ship and go through engineering in the standard time, and everything will go smoothly. There's no extra hiccups in this building, and that's typically a goal in the design. And so, we have it. We have a working building here. Now, in many cases, if you do get your minimum requirement, so people will say, hey, look, I have a bay. It's just wide enough and it works. Sometimes it may not always work, and here is an example. I call this the sail. Now we'll call it the sail because this building is a lot larger. We went from 30, now 30 wide, now it's 50 wide. Also, I will admit, I did increase the wind load to, typically it comes out 110, I moved it up to 120 to sort of get an effect. So I increased the wind load. And so I increased the wind load and I increased the size of the end wall to make a sail. A lot more wind will hit that wall, and thus will create a higher load. And even though we have a minimum 4-foot bay, right, matches the height minimum requirement, I am still getting the engineering warning it cannot find adequate X-bracing. So, there are some factors in that. Just because you have the minimum 4-foot bay space, if you have a giant sail on the building, it's going to cause an effect. Other types of, isn't necessarily a sail, but if you have, I've seen it before where mezzanines, they add a lot of extra weight to a building, and so it'll shake a lot more when the building moves in this direction with earthquake. And so in rare occasions, you can actually have the earthquake overpower the wind loads with mezzanines. And so I've seen it where you need an extra bay because of earthquake loads. And in this particular case, with many solutions we'll be going through, if you just make it a little bit wider, there's a 50% wider, that bay, a little bit wider, it calculates out, and it doesn't have any of the warnings again. So it was able to handle that extra load by making, a little bit wider, 4 foot to 6 foot, to get that effect, to make that building work. And so it's not always cut and clear. And again, one of the things again, if you don't have a mezzanine in the building, it is quite handy dandy, and you don't have to do, what's great about our buildings being cold formed and light in that sense, there's not a lot to it. You can make a really long building here. So you have 124 foot, and sure enough, it still works. I mind you, there is a little star down here, and it mentions the adequate X-brake, the anchors, so the anchors are having issues. We do have engineering ways to get those to work. I ran a check and these do work, but if you don't want to go through that, which we're not encouraging, we want to definitely go through, and we can make it a little bit, again, typically just making it a little bit wider will solve that. Run that through, and again, now we have a standard building. And again, and so it's able to handle like a really long building with our, just that little bit of X-bracing can hold this whole building, at bay. Here we have how many frames covering this distance, right? But yet you have this one X-brace covering all of this. It really is great what X-bracing can do. One of the things you're probably wondering, why do I keep putting it in the center? And I actually actually have a reason for that. This is a little bit of bonus here. We're going to go back to our good example. Here we are, a better example, or where we started, and we need to make it a little wider because I started off with it being 4, and we'll calculate that out again. And so here we are, we have our building here, and so let's keep an eye on our price right here. We have it at what, $13.60. All right, so we have 44 wide building, $13.60. That's what we're looking at. So we're going to move, let's go to I have a building already made to where instead of putting it necessarily always in the center, I put it on the corner. You know, sometimes people don't like it in the middle, but hey, we want to put it in the corner. So I have a better example in the corner. So I have the same building, but now it's in the corner. All right, now let's calculate that out. All right, and for some reason it went up an extra $500 just because we moved the X-bracing from here now to the corner. Now I want you, if you guys are watching this on the video, take a moment and pause. What's going on? Why did it increase an extra $500? You know, let's try to work that out. Give you a little moment there. Give them time to pause and think about it and wonder what's going on. The answer is that we have increased the tributary width. If you were able to notice, this frame is actually now a double frame. When it was in the other format, it was single. And again, with the sail analogy, right, we have the sail on the end wall. Look how much we increased the sail on this. It has to now, this frame has to cover from this distance all the way to this distance. And when we go to our building here, we'll look at the bays. We have a tributary width of 20. All right, so okay, and that's quite a bit of load to take on there. If we go back to our other buildings, just so to compare to our better example with our 4 foot there, we have a tributary of 12. You know, it doesn't have to cover quite nearly as much. Our distance is from here to here. You know that, and it's the same thing with this frame as well, from this line to that line. So it's taking a lot. 12. It's doing a lot less. So in that regards, we want to try to lower tributary width. That's definitely another thing also to keep money down and savings in design and engineering in that regards. And so that's a great aspect of that. Now, one of the things that, sometimes X-bracing isn't convenient in the middle, or sometimes from some people it's not convenient at all. It oftentimes it gets in the way of doors and windows, and that's understanding. I have an example here where we have creative windows, that's what I titled it. We have a building where we have, these windows are actually, they're creatively placed to where they're in a bay with X-bracing. And you don't always have to put a window right in the middle. You can, adjust it to the left or to the right or go up. Down probably isn't the best idea. I don't see many people wanting windows on the ground. I have actually worked in one, I have seen a building where it was really tall. It was a little bit custom, but we had actually a door fit underneath the X-bracing. It was a really tall building. It was right in the center of the bay, and we were able to get it to work. The program actually runs a check. It doesn't put X-bracing in bays with doors, but it will put X-bracing in bays with windows. Now, mind you, this is creative, trying to avoid it, but sometimes, like some people, like I'm a man, I'll admit, a window just it gives me light. That's great. It lets the sun come in, and I love that. If there is a big strap through the middle, it's really not going to bother me. Some people are pretty chill like that, like myself. I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to things. I'm not really particular, but you know what? Many people, I don't think they would like a strap through their window, and so but some people don't mind. So you can. It's always available. That is an option. The warning, if it will address, that points out, yeah, X-bracing has been added to the following bays with windows. Sidewall A, B, double-checked the X-bracing to make sure it's compatible. Sometimes people are like, yeah, through the window, that's fine. But again, if it's not, for many people, the majority of people aren't as chill in that regards, and they don't want things, and you can, work with the X-bracing to sort of get around it. The thing is with you're going to have to deal with X-bracing. I had an opportunity to go on vacation, and I was in a building with a bounce house. I was playing with my kid, and I wasn't realizing it was sadly a competitor's building in that regards, but I was noticing it still had X-bracing in it. And where it didn't have X-bracing, it had these really big frames, and that's actually what we're sort of going to go into next. Oh, actually, before we go into next, one of the things I want to also point out is looking at this end wall. Back in the day, if you were around a while ago, we actually have the same requirements on X-bracing on the side walls as the end walls. The end walls also required 1 bay of X-bracing. Since then, we've actually sort of improved it. We've made adaptations and changes to the program to treat the end wall as a frame. And instead of having X-bracing, we have these knee braces here to function in the same manner as a frame. So instead of doing that, we have a frame. And we did have a big announcement about moment frames. There was admittingly some confusion about that. We're going to deal with that. Moment frames are actually only in, at this time, only in roof-only buildings. Actually, we'll have the sheeting display as well. This is a roof-only building, and you can see right there, there's some extra metal around this frame as opposed to this one, and these are what are called moment frames. They act as, they have the term frame, so they act as a frame, you know, trying to get the load up and around and holding it together. They're a little bit different. Again, when the load pushes on here, which there isn't much because it's big open, but when the load pushes on, you know, it goes, it wants to go this direction, right? And, you know, and so it, in like X-bracing where it tries to pull it back and hold it back, it doesn't have that opportunity, and so you get a lot of twisting in that regards in this region. And so that's why there's a lot of, if you've worked with a moment frame, there's a lot of bolts, in many cases up to 10 bolts in that location. And so there's moment frames. Not only are moment frames more bulky in that regards, there's more material, they're more expensive than X-bracing, they're also actually less effective. And so typically we haven't necessarily thrown them in. They work great for roof-only buildings in that regards, and so the option is available. If we come over to engineering, we have it here. It's set for only buildings in this format where we just have no seating, no siding at all. And again, another thing that with the moment frames in that regards, they are oftentimes a popular request with custom engineering, you know, because of, you know, the issues of X-bracing that people have. Sadly, they come up. It's not always a great solution in that regards. Again, like I said, it's more expensive and it's not as effective. Here's actually an example of a building. This is the same size, 42 by 30, but we have it closed. Here we are, have it closed, and here we have doors. So it's a similar type building. I'll get rid of the roof here, and so, but we have doors on this wall, and typically what people will request is, hey, we'll put it on a moment frame right here. And that's understandable, but like we have this header girt right here, so we have to adjust that. And with all those bolts in that connection there, these header girts next with the doors next to them don't connect as well. So now we have to adjust these header girts, and then you have to shorten the jambs and move those around, and so you get a sort of a cascade effect in that regards. And one of the things I would push for is, again, work with the X-bracing. We're going to try to sell the X-bracing as a part of the building. Here we go. We have, so again, let's look at the price again before I move. We have, was it 11.5 here, and we're going to do the closed better. The closed better is I added a little bit more room. Again, some people don't like that, but and we got X-bracing to work here at the end. The reason why it didn't necessarily bump up to double frames is because we already had 3 bays, so it wasn't making that effect there. So we have X-bracing here, and we made a little bit room. We added 4 foot to the building to get that minimum height there. Added that to the building. It's also nice is it didn't cause the warning with the anchors, so that's nice. And there's no warnings with this building. Mind you, it did go up $1,000, as it says, but there's no asterisk. So technically that 11.5 that was displaying last time wasn't fully accurate. If you account for the extra costs in engineering and the extra price of materials, you're not necessarily saving $1,000 per se. And that's also if you just add frames for one side with this particular building. If you need it on both sides, that's even more extra material. You can be looking at almost $800 with engineering and materials, let alone time it would take to make that adjustment. And so if you look at the difference cost there, here it's already set. The building's good to go. And so, and on top of that, you get extra room. It's not like you're paying extra for nothing. You get extra room in the building, and it'd be nice to have 4 foot. Put a desk or something over here, something to put stuff on top of with your cool 3-car garage. People like to put stuff in garages. More room doesn't seem to be an issue for a lot of people. And again, I would tend to go sell, again, I want to conclude, sell the X-bracing. The X-bracing is a critical part of the building, as critical as the frames. We need a X-bracing or a frame, moment frame, one or the other, but X-bracing is already set up with this system, and it's something we target your design for that. So like, hey, why do we need this extra room? You can say like, hey, this X-bracing keeps the building, it's as important as the frame. And so again, sell it how cool what X-bracing does. A little bit of X-bracing goes a really long way. One of the cool things about our buildings is when I looked at I mentioned earlier the story of going on vacation, is that we totally just added a whole other frame to this building. It only cost an extra $1,000, and it's a whole bunch, but in terms of percent, it was only about 10%. And again, even if you count the other moment frames, you're still going to be paying for that. So like it's a really good sell in that regard. So it's an important part. And whether you're dealing with cold form buildings or competitor buildings, even skyscrapers still have issues. It's really fun to go through Metropolis and see. You can find X-brace patterns. It's still a regular thing with any buildings. You need this type of X-bracing or framing to control that load. And so this is a part of the building, and I would, instead of fighting it, trying to say like, why do we have to have this here, I would try to work with it and sell it as a part in that regards, or work the windows around in some way. Work with it in that regards, and sell it with the building. This is part of the product that this ACT program designs. And with that, I thank you all for listening, and hope you have learned more and can take the information and share it around. It helps definitely teaching it. So I'd recommend going over and maybe share it with some friends or something. That helps get it in your head so you know how that works. Thank you all again.